Welcome to True.
The Last Man Out of the North Tower, A Firefighter's Miracle. A story inspired by September 11th, 2001. Chapter 1. The Firefighter's Son. Joseph Caruso was born to fight fires. His father, Salvatore, had been a firefighter. His grandfather, Antonio, had been a firefighter. His great-grandfather, Giuseppe, had been one of the first Italian-American firefighters in New York City, joining the department in 1912 when discrimination made such a thing nearly impossible. "Fire is in our blood," Salvatore used to tell young Joseph. "The Caruso men don't run from flames, we run toward them." Joseph, everyone called him Joe, grew up in the firehouse. Ladder Company 18 in the Bronx was his second home. He learned to slide down the pole before he learned to ride a bicycle. He memorized the locations of every hydrant in the neighborhood before he memorized his multiplication tables. He knew the smell of smoke, the weight of a hose, the brotherhood of firefighters before he knew almost anything else. There was never any question what he would become. Joe joined the FDNY in 1984 at the age of 22. He was assigned to Engine Company 54 in Midtown Manhattan, one of the busiest firehouses in the city. His father had pulled strings to get him the assignment, though Joe never knew it. "You earned it," Salvatore told him on graduation day. "Everything you get from now on, you earn. That's the Caruso way." Joe believed him, and he lived up to it. In 17 years as a firefighter, Joe had responded to over 3,000 calls. He had pulled people from burning buildings, cut them from wrecked cars, revived them when their hearts had stopped. He had been burned, broken, and nearly killed more times than he could count, but he kept going back, because that's what firefighters do. By 2001, Joe was 39 years old and a lieutenant with Ladder Company 5 in Lower Manhattan. He had transferred there 3 years earlier, wanting to be closer to his family. His wife, Angela, was a nurse at NYU Medical Center. Their son, Michael, was 14, a freshman at Xavier High School, who was already talking about becoming a firefighter himself. Their daughter, Isabella, was 11, a quiet girl who loved books and art and worried constantly about her father's safety. "Promise me you'll be careful, Daddy," Isabella would say every morning before Joe left for work. "I promise, sweetheart. I'll always come home to you." It was a promise he had kept for 17 years, a promise he intended to keep forever. The firehouse at Ladder 5 was located on Houston Street, just a few miles north of the World Trade Center. Joe could see the Twin Towers from the roof of the building, those massive silver giants that dominated the downtown skyline. He had fought fires in the Trade Center before, small ones, electrical fires, kitchen fires, the occasional false alarm. The buildings were so large, so complex, that fires were inevitable, but they had always been contained quickly. The towers had been designed to withstand almost anything. "Those buildings will be standing long after we're gone," Joe once told his crew. "They're indestructible." He believed it. Everyone believed it. On the night of September 10th, 2001, Joe worked a late shift. A warehouse fire in Soho, nothing major, but it took hours to fully extinguish. He didn't get home until after midnight, exhausted and smelling of smoke. Angela was waiting up for him, as she always did. "Long night?" she asked, helping him out of his jacket. "The usual. Some idiot left a space heater running next to cardboard boxes." "Anyone hurt?" "Nobody. We got there in time." Angela smiled. After 17 years of marriage to a firefighter, she had learned not to worry about the small stuff. It was the big stuff that kept her up at night, the 5-alarm blazes, the building collapses, the calls that didn't go the way they were supposed to. "Michael wants to talk to you about something," she said. "He's been waiting all night." "Can it wait until morning? I'm dead on my feet." He insisted, said it was important. Joe sighed and trudged upstairs to Michael's room. The boy was sitting at his desk, a brochure spread out in front of him. "Hey, Dad, you got a minute?" "For you, always." Michael handed him the brochure. It was for the FDNY Junior Firefighter Program, a summer training course for teenagers interested in becoming firefighters. "I want to apply," Michael said. "I know I'm only 14, but they take kids starting at 15, and I'll be 15 next summer, and—" "Slow down." Joe sat on the edge of the bed, looking at his son, at those same dark eyes he saw in the mirror every morning. at that same stubborn jaw that had been passed down through 4 generations of Caruso men. You sure about this? Being a firefighter? It's not like the movies. It's dangerous. It's exhausting. You see things that stay with you forever. I know. That's why I want to do it. Because it matters. Because you save lives. Joe felt a swell of pride so intense it nearly brought tears to his eyes. Your grandfather will be thrilled, he said. You know that, right? He's been waiting for this since you were born. I know, but I wanted to tell you first. You're the one who showed me what it means to be a firefighter. You're the one who made me want this. Joe pulled his son into a hug. This boy, who is no longer a boy, who is becoming a man, a Caruso man, carrying on a legacy that stretched back 100 years. I'm proud of you, Michael. So proud. Thanks, Dad. Joe went to bed that night happier than he had been in months. His son wanted to follow in his footsteps. The legacy would continue. He didn't know that in less than 12 hours, he would be fighting for his life inside the North Tower. He didn't know that he would become the last man out, the final survivor to escape before the building came down. He didn't know that his promise to Isabella, "I'll always come home to you," would be tested in ways he could never imagine. Chapter 2: The Call. September 11th, 2001 dawned clear and beautiful. Joe woke at 7 a.m., later than usual. Angela had let him sleep in after his late night. The kids were already at school, Michael at Xavier, Isabella at PS 234 in Tribeca. Coffee's on the counter, Angela said, kissing him as she grabbed her purse. I've got to run. My shift starts at 8. See you tonight? I'll be home by 6. Love you. Love you too. Joe drank his coffee slowly, enjoying the quiet. He was scheduled for a day shift, starting at 9 a.m. He had plenty of time. At 8:30, he was getting dressed when the phone rang. It was Tommy Brennan, his best friend at Ladder 5. They had gone through training together, served together for 15 years, stood as best men at each other's weddings. You watching the news? Tommy asked. His voice was strange, tight, controlled. No? Why? Turn it on, now. Joe grabbed the remote and flipped to CNN. What he saw made his blood run cold. The North Tower was on fire. A massive hole had been torn in its upper floors, somewhere around the 91st floor, maybe higher. Smoke was pouring out, thick and black. Flames were visible even from the helicopter cameras circling the building. What the hell happened? Joe breathed. A plane hit it. A goddamn plane flew right into it. Oh, an accident? I don't know, but we're being called in. All hands. This is going to be bad, Joe. Really bad. Joe was already grabbing his keys. I'll be there in 10 minutes. He hung up and ran out the door, not bothering to finish getting dressed. He drove to the firehouse in 7 minutes, breaking every traffic law in the city. When he arrived, chaos had already taken hold. Firefighters were streaming in from all directions, off-duty guys who had heard the news and come running, on-duty crews preparing to respond. The radio was alive with chatter, reports of casualties, requests for additional units, updates on the fire's spread. Captain Frank DeLuca was standing in the bay, barking orders. Ladder 5, Engine 54, you're with me. We're going to the North Tower. Full gear, everyone. This is not a drill. Joe suited up faster than he ever had in his life. Turnout coat, boots, helmet, mask, air tank. 30 pounds of equipment that felt like nothing compared to the weight of what they were about to face. Tommy appeared beside him, already dressed. You ready for this? I don't think anyone's ready for this. Then let's get ready anyway. They climbed onto the truck as it roared out of the firehouse, sirens wailing. Through the windshield, Joe could see the smoke rising over lower Manhattan, a column of black that reached toward the sky like a hand grasping at heaven. At 9:03 a.m., as they crossed Houston Street, the second plane hit. Joe saw it happen, saw the aircraft, impossibly large, impossibly fast, banking low over the city, saw it disappear behind the South Tower, saw the fireball erupt from the other side. Jesus Christ, someone whispered. They hit the other one. The truck fell silent. Every man inside understood what this meant. This was no accident. This was an attack. They arrived at the World Trade Center at 9:15 a.m. The scene was beyond anything Joe had ever witnessed. Both towers were burning. Debris was falling from above. Glass, steel, paper, things he didn't want to identify. People were streaming out of the buildings by the thousands, covered in dust and blood and terror. And there were bodies. People who had jumped from the upper floors, choosing a quick death over burning alive. Joe saw them on the plaza, on the street, on the roofs of lower buildings. Each one was a life lost. Each one was someone's child, someone's parent, someone's friend. Joe pushed the images aside. He had a job to do. Ladder 5, Engine 54, we're going into the North Tower, Captain DeLuca announced. Our assignment is floors 60 through 70. We're looking for survivors, helping evacuation, doing whatever we can. Stay together, watch out for each other, and for God's sake, be careful. They entered the lobby of the North Tower. Inside, it was chaos. The beautiful marble floors were covered in debris. The windows had been blown out. Firefighters from a dozen companies were staging in the lobby, preparing to climb. Joe looked up at the ceiling. Somewhere above him, 100 floors above, people were burning, people were dying, people were counting on him to save them. "Let's go," he said to Tommy. "Let's go save some lives." They started climbing. Chapter 3, The Climb. The stairs of the North Tower seemed to go on forever. Joe had trained for this. Every firefighter did. They climbed stairs in full gear, carrying equipment, building the endurance they would need for moments exactly like this, but nothing could have prepared him for the reality. 60 pounds of gear, 93 floors to climb, thousands of people streaming down as the firefighters climbed up. "Keep moving," Captain DeLuca called from ahead. "Steady pace. Don't burn yourselves out, They passed floor after floor, 10, 20, 30. The stairwell was crowded but orderly. People moved aside for the firefighters, pressing against the walls, making room. "Thank you," they said. "Thank you for coming." "God bless you," they said. "Please be careful." Joe nodded at each one, too focused on climbing to speak. Sweat poured down his face. His legs burned. His lungs screamed for more air than his mask could provide. At the 35th floor, they encountered their first casualties. A woman had collapsed on the stairs, elderly, maybe 70, clutching her chest, a heart attack, probably triggered by the stress and exertion. "Tommy, stay with her," Captain DeLuca ordered. "Get her down, we'll continue up." Tommy knelt beside the woman, already checking her vitals. Joe clapped him on the shoulder as he passed. "See you on the other side, brother." "Count on it." They kept climbing, 40, 45, 50. At the 52nd floor, they found a group of office workers who had become lost in the smoke. A dozen people, mostly women, huddled in the stairwell, crying. "Follow us," Joe told them. "We'll get you out." He assigned 2 men from Engine 54 to escort them down. The group continued with 6 firefighters now, instead of 8. Floor 55, 60, 65. The higher they climbed, the worse conditions became. Smoke was thick now, seeping in from above. The stairwell walls were warm to the touch. The sound of the fire, that terrible roaring, crackling sound, grew louder with every floor. At the 68th floor, they found her. A woman in her 30s, sitting on the stairs, clutching her ankle. Her face was twisted in pain. Her clothes were torn and burned. "I can't walk," she gasped. "I tried, but I can't. Please, don't leave me." Joe knelt beside her. Her ankle was badly swollen, broken, almost certainly. She had made it down 20 floors on a broken ankle before the pain became too much. "What's your name?" he asked. Linda Chen. I work on the 88th floor. I was late to work today. I was just getting to my desk when..." "It's okay, Linda. We're going to get you out of here." Joe looked at Captain DeLuca. They both knew what this meant. Someone would have to carry her down 68 floors. Someone would have to sacrifice their own chances of escape. "I'll take her," Joe said. "Joe?" "I'll take her, Captain. Get the others up. Do what you can. I'll get her out." DeLuca hesitated, then he nodded. "Be careful, Caruso. Don't be a hero." "Too late for that." Joe lifted Linda onto his back in a fireman's carry. She was small, maybe 100 pounds, but added to his 60 pounds of gear, she felt like a mountain. He started descending. One floor at a time, one step at a time. The weight crushed down on him, making every movement agony. His back screamed. His legs threatened to buckle, but he kept moving. "Thank you," Linda whispered into his ear. "Thank you for not leaving me." "I'm not going to leave you, I promise." Floor 65, 60, 55. The stairs were emptier now. Most people had already evacuated. Joe passed other firefighters still climbing, their faces grim and determined. "Good luck," he called to them. "You too, brother. Get that woman out." Floor 50, 45, 40. At the 35th floor, Joe found Tommy. He was still there, still working on the elderly woman. "She's stable," Tommy said. "Paramedics are on their way up." "Come with me. We're getting out." "What about the others? What about DeLuca?" "They're still climbing. We'll meet them outside." Tommy hesitated, then he nodded. Together, they continued down, Tommy carrying the elderly woman, Joe carrying Linda, 2 firefighters and 2 survivors, descending through hell. Floor 30, 25th, 20th. At 9:59 a.m., the building shook. It was unlike anything Joe had ever felt. The entire stairwell lurched to one side. The lights flickered and died. Somewhere above them, there was a sound like the world ending, a roar that drowned out everything else. "What was that?" Linda screamed. Joe didn't know, but he knew they needed to move faster. "Run," he said to Tommy. "Run as fast as you can." They ran. Floor 15, 10, 5. The lobby appeared before them like a vision of salvation. Joe burst through the stairwell door, Linda still on his back, and sprinted toward the exit. Outside, chaos. Fire trucks, ambulances, police cars, people running in every direction, and behind him, a sight that stopped his heart. The South Tower was gone. Where it had stood minutes before, there was nothing, just a massive cloud of dust and debris rolling through the streets like a tidal wave. "Oh my God," Linda whispered. Joe set her down gently on the plaza, his arms finally giving out. Get her to medical," he shouted at a nearby paramedic. "Broken ankle, probably other injuries." "What about you?" Joe looked back at the North Tower, at the building still standing, at the building where Captain DeLuca and the others were still climbing. "I'm going back in." Chapter 4, The Collapse. Tommy grabbed Joe's arm. "Are you insane? The other tower just collapsed. This one could go any second." "DeLuca's still in there. Pete, Danny, they're all still in there. And they're trained firefighters. They know what to do. You going back in won't help them." "I can't just leave them, Tommy." "You're not leaving them. You're staying alive so you can help them when they get out." Joe stared at his friend, at this man he had known for 15 years, at those eyes that held the same fear Joe felt in his own heart. "If I don't go back, and they don't make it, then you'll live with it, like we all live with it, like every firefighter lives with the ones they couldn't save." Joe knew Tommy was right. He knew it was suicide to go back in, but the thought of abandoning his brothers, of standing here while they burned, was unbearable. He was still standing there, frozen with indecision, when the rumbling started. It began as a sound, a low, deep groan, like the earth itself was protesting. Then the ground began to shake. Then the air filled with a roar that drowned out everything else. Joe looked up. The North Tower was collapsing. "Run!" Tommy screamed. They ran. Joe had never moved so fast in his life. His legs pumped, his lungs burned. The world around him was disappearing, consumed by a wall of dust and debris that was moving faster than any human could escape. He dove behind a fire truck just as the cloud reached him. Darkness. Complete, absolute darkness. Joe couldn't see, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The dust filled his mouth, his nose, his lungs. He choked, gagged, fought for air that wasn't there. For a long moment, he was certain he was dead. Then, slowly, the dust began to settle. Light filtered through, gray, diffused, like dawn on a foggy morning. Joe opened his eyes. He was alive. He was covered in dust, every inch of him coated in gray ash. His eyes burned, his throat felt like sandpaper, but he was breathing, he was alive. "Tommy?" he called out. His voice was a croak. "Tommy, where are you?" "Here," the response came from somewhere to his left. "I'm here, I'm okay." Joe struggled to his feet. Around him, the world had transformed. Where the Twin Towers had stood, those magnificent silver giants that had dominated the skyline, there was nothing, just mountains of rubble, smoking and burning, just destruction beyond comprehension. And silence. For a moment, everything was silent. The roar of the collapse had faded. The sounds of the city, traffic, voices, life, had disappeared. All that remained was silence. Then the screaming started. People buried under debris, crying for help, people injured, calling for medics, people searching for loved ones, shouting names into the void. Joe's training took over. He was a firefighter. There were people to save. "Tommy, we need to find survivors. We need to start digging." "What about DeLuca? What about the others?" Joe looked at the mountain of rubble where the North Tower had stood, at the impossibility of anyone surviving that collapse. "We'll look for them too, but right now, we help whoever we can find." They started digging. For the next 6 hours, Joe worked without stopping. He pulled bodies from the rubble, some alive, most not. He carried the injured to triage stations. He dug through debris with his bare hands when his tools broke. And he searched for his brothers. Captain Frank DeLuca, Pete Romano, Danny Sullivan, all the men who had climbed into the North Tower with him, all the men who had been somewhere above the 68th floor once the building came down. He didn't find them. At 8 p.m., when the sun had set and the search had shifted from rescue to recovery, Joe finally stopped. He sat on a piece of twisted steel, surrounded by the ruins of the World Trade Center. His hands were bleeding. His body was broken. His heart was shattered. 343 firefighters had died today. He knew many of them personally, had trained with them, had shared meals with them, had called them brothers. And he had survived. The guilt hit him like a physical blow. Why him? Why had he lived while DeLuca died, while Pete and Danny died, while 343 of his brothers died? He had left them. He had carried Linda down while they climbed up. He had saved one woman while they saved hundreds, and died trying. The tears came then. Joe sat in the ruins and cried, for his friends, for the victims, for the city, for the world that would never be the same. He didn't hear Tommy approach until his friend sat down beside him. "You can't save everyone," Tommy said quietly. "I know you wanted to. I know you tried, but you can't save everyone." "I should have stayed with them. I should have kept climbing. And then you'd be dead too, and Linda Chen would be dead, and that elderly woman on the 35th floor would be dead. It's not enough." "It's never enough. That's the burden we carry, but it's something, Joe. It matters." Joe looked at his friend, at this man who understood, who had made the same impossible choices, who carried the same impossible weight. "I don't know how to live with this." "You just do, one day at a time, one moment at a time. And you remember them, all of them, and you try to be worthy of still being here." Joe nodded slowly. He didn't believe it, not yet, but maybe, in time, he would. "Let's go home," Tommy said. "Angela's been calling the firehouse every hour. She doesn't know if you're alive." Home. Angela, Michael, Isabella. The people he had promised to come home to. Joe stood up slowly, his body screaming in protest. "Yeah," he said. "Let's go home." Chapter 5. Coming Home. Joe arrived home at 11 p.m. He had tried to call Angela from the site, but the cell networks were down. He had tried to find a payphone, but none of them worked. In the end, he just walked, north through the ruins of Lower Manhattan, through streets covered in ash and paper, through a city that would never be the same. When he reached his building in Greenwich Village, Angela was waiting on the stoop. She saw him coming from a block away. She saw the gray coating his body, the blood on his hands, the broken look in his eyes, and she ran. They met in the middle of the street. Angela threw her arms around him, not caring about the dust, not caring about anything except that he was alive. "I thought you were dead," she sobbed. "I watched the buildings fall, and I thought you were dead." "I'm here. I'm okay. I'm here." They said, on the news, they said hundreds of firefighters were killed. They said Ladder 5 was inside the North Tower. "I know, I was inside, but I got out. I got out." Angela pulled back and looked at him, at this man she had loved for 20 years, at the husband who had walked through hell to come home to her. "Michael and Isabella, they're upstairs. They've been watching the news all day. They're terrified." I need to see them. I need to see them. They walked upstairs together, hand in hand. When Joe opened the apartment door, both children were standing in the living room, waiting. Isabella saw him first. "Daddy!" She ran to him, throwing herself into his arms. She was crying, deep, racking sobs that shook her entire body. "You promised," she gasped. "You promised you'd always come home." "I know, sweetheart. I kept my promise. I'm here." Michael approached more slowly. At 14, he was too old for the kind of desperate embrace his sister was giving, but when he reached Joe, he hugged him just as tight. "I saw the buildings fall," Michael said. "I was at school. They let us watch the news. I saw the North Tower collapse, and I knew you were inside." "I was, but I got out. I got out in time." "How? How did you survive?" Joe thought about Linda Chen, about the broken ankle that had forced him to turn back, about the decision to descend instead of climb, about all the random, arbitrary moments that had kept him alive while 343 of his brothers died. "I don't know," he admitted. "I just did." That night, after Angela had finally fallen asleep, Joe sat on the edge of Isabella's bed. His daughter was asleep too, exhausted from hours of crying, from the relief of having her father home. But even in sleep, her hand gripped his. Joe watched her breathe, in and out, this beautiful girl who had asked him to be careful every morning, who had made him promise to always come home. He had kept that promise, against all odds, despite everything. But so many others hadn't, so many fathers, mothers, children, all gone, all taken by the flames and the rubble and the hatred that had brought those planes down. Joe didn't understand it. He didn't understand how human beings could do what had been done today. He didn't understand the hatred that could drive men to fly aircraft into buildings full of innocent people. But he understood one thing. He was alive. He had been given a second chance, and he had to make it count. "I'm going to be better," he whispered to Isabella. "I'm going to be here more. I'm going to be the father you deserve." She stirred in her sleep, but didn't wake. "I love you, sweetheart. I love you so much." Joe leaned down and kissed her forehead. Then he went to Michael's room and did the same. Then he returned to Angela and held her close, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. Tomorrow, he would go back to ground zero. He would dig through the rubble, searching for survivors, searching for bodies, searching for his brothers. He would work until his hands bled and his body gave out. But tonight, he was home. He was with his family. He was alive. And that was enough. Chapter 6. The Weight of Survival. The weeks after September 11th were the hardest of Joe's life. He worked at Ground Zero every day, digging, searching, hoping. The recovery operation continued around the clock, thousands of workers sifting through the debris for any sign of the missing. They found Captain Frank DeLuca on September 18th. His body was recovered from the stairwell of the North Tower, somewhere around the 75th floor. He had been climbing when the building came down. They found Pete Romano on September 22nd, Danny Sullivan on September 25th. Each discovery was another wound. Each funeral was another goodbye. Joe attended them all, stood in his dress uniform, saluted the flag-draped coffins, wept for the brothers he would never see again. "How do you keep going back?" Angela asked him one night. How do you face it every day?" "Because they would do the same for me, because I owe them that." "You don't owe anyone anything, Joe. You survived. You came home. That's what matters." Is it enough?" Angela took his face in her hands, looked into his eyes with an intensity that made him feel seen, truly seen, for the first time since the attacks. "You saved lives that day. You carried a woman down 68 floors on a broken ankle. You got her out. You got yourself out. That matters, Joe. It matters." "But DeLuca made his choice. He kept climbing because that's who he was. You started descending because there was someone who needed you to descend. Both choices were right. Both choices were heroic." Joe wanted to believe her. He tried to believe her, but the guilt was always there, a weight on his chest that never lifted, a voice in his head that asked why him, why had he survived when so many others hadn't? Survivor's guilt, the therapists called it, a common response to trauma, something that could be managed, processed, eventually healed. But Joe didn't feel like he could ever heal. The wound was too deep, the loss was too great. In October, Joe was assigned to help with the identification of remains. It was grim work, sorting through debris, cataloging personal effects, trying to give names to the anonymous dead. Joe hated it, but someone had to do it. One afternoon, he found a photograph. It was burned around the edges, covered in dust, barely recognizable, but Joe could make out the image: a family. A man, a woman, 2 young children. They were standing in front of a Christmas tree, smiling at the camera. Joe stared at the photograph for a long time. He didn't know who these people were, didn't know if they had survived, didn't know if this picture was all that remained of a life that had been full and happy and real. But he knew what it represented: hope, love, the things that mattered. He put the photograph in his pocket. He would turn it over to the family services team, let them try to identify the people in it, but first, he needed to hold on to it for a while, needed to remember what he was fighting for. In November, Joe received a letter. It was from Linda Chen, the woman he had carried down 68 floors. She had spent 6 weeks in the hospital recovering from her injuries, but she was home now. She was alive. "Dear Lieutenant Caruso," the letter began. "I don't know how to thank you for what you did. You saved my life. You carried me when I couldn't walk. You refused to leave me behind when it would have been so easy to do so. I think about you every day. I wonder if you made it out. I wonder if you're okay. I hope this letter finds you, and I hope you know that because of you, I get to see my family again. I get to watch my children grow up. I get to live. There are no words that can express what that means. You are a hero, Lieutenant Caruso, a true hero, and I will spend the rest of my life grateful for you. With all my heart, Linda Chen." Joe read the letter 3 times, then he folded it carefully and put it in his wallet next to the burned photograph. 2 pieces of hope, 2 reminders of why he had survived. In December, Joe went to see his father. Salvatore was 75 years old now, retired for 10 years, living alone in the Bronx apartment where Joe had grown up. His mother had passed 5 years earlier, cancer, quick and merciless. "You look like hell," Salvatore said when Joe walked through the door. "I feel like hell." "Sit down, I'll make coffee." They sat in the kitchen, the same kitchen where Joe had eaten breakfast as a child, where he had done homework, where he had told his father he wanted to be a firefighter. The apartment looked smaller now, shabbier, but it still felt like home. "Tell me," Salvatore said. Joe told him everything: the climb, the collapse, the guilt, the nightmares that woke him every night, the faces of the dead that haunted his every moment. Salvatore listened without interrupting. When Joe finished, the old man was quiet for a long time. "You know what your grandfather used to tell me?" Salvatore finally said. "He used to say that being a firefighter means carrying 2 weights. One is the weight of the people you save, the other is the weight of the people you don't. How do you carry the second one? You don't, not alone. You let other people help you. You let time help you. And you remember that the people you saved, they carry weight too. They carry gratitude. They carry lives that you gave them. It doesn't feel like enough. It never feels like enough, but it is. Every life you save is enough. Every person who goes home to their family because of you, that's enough. That's everything." Joe looked at his father, at this man who had served 30 years in the FDNY, who had lost friends in fires, who had carried the same weight Joe was carrying now. "How did you survive it?" Joe asked. "All those years, all those losses?" "I focused on the living, on your mother, on you, on the people who needed me to keep going. The dead are gone, Joseph. We honor them, we remember them, but we don't let them take us down. We live, for them, for ourselves, for the ones who still need us." Joe felt tears on his cheeks, the first tears he had allowed himself since that night at Ground Zero. "I don't know if I can do it, Dad. I don't know if I can go back." Salvatore reached across the table and took his son's hand. "You can, because you're a Caruso, and Caruso men don't quit. We get knocked down, we get back up. That's who we are." Joe squeezed his father's hand, this man who had taught him everything, who had shown him what it meant to be a firefighter, a father, a man. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too, son. Now drink your coffee. It's getting cold." Joe returned to duty in January 2002. He requested a transfer to a different firehouse, not because he was running away, but because he needed a fresh start. He was assigned to Ladder 10, located directly across the street from Ground Zero. Every day he looked at the site, at the massive hole where the towers had stood, at the workers still clearing debris, still searching for remains, still trying to make sense of the unimaginable. And every day he went to work, he responded to calls, he fought fires, he saved lives. Because that's what firefighters do, that's what Caruso men do. In September 2002, on the first anniversary of the attacks, Joe stood at the memorial service with his family. Angela was beside him, holding his hand. Michael, now 15, officially enrolled in the junior firefighter program, stood tall in his dress clothes. Isabella, now 12, still asking her father to be careful every morning, held a bouquet of flowers. When the names of the dead were read, Joe listened to each one. 343 firefighters, 2,977 total victims, each name a life, each name a story that would never be finished. And then his name, or what could have been his name, passed by in the silence between names read and names remembered. He was not on that list. He was alive. He thought about DeLuca, about Pete and Danny, about all the brothers he had lost. And he thought about Linda Chen, about the elderly woman on the 35th floor, about all the people he had saved. "I'm going to live for them," Joe whispered. "All of them, the living and the dead." Angela squeezed his hand. "You already are." Epilogue. Joseph Caruso served with the FDNY for 31 years. He retired in 2015 at the age of 53. His body was giving out, the lungs damaged by years of breathing smoke, the back worn down by decades of carrying equipment and people. Like many 9/11 first responders, he suffered from health issues related to the toxic conditions at Ground Zero. But he survived. He lived. Michael became a firefighter in 2008. He served with distinction for 15 years before transferring to a training position at the Fire Academy, teaching new recruits, passing on the lessons his father had taught him. Isabella became a social worker. She spent her career helping trauma survivors, including the families of 9/11 victims. She never forgot her father's promise to always come home, and she dedicated her life to helping others find their way home too. Angela retired from nursing in 2012. She and Joe spent their retirement years traveling, spending time with their grandchildren, and volunteering with organizations that supported first responders. Every year, on September 11th, they returned to the memorial. They touched the names of the fallen. They placed flowers. They remembered. And Joe told the story to his grandchildren, to anyone who would listen, of the day the towers fell, of the climb, of Linda Chen, of the decision to descend that had saved his life. "I don't know why I survived," he would say. "I've spent years trying to understand it, but I've stopped looking for reasons. I just try to be worthy of the gift I was given." He paused. 343 firefighters died that day. They died doing what they loved, saving lives, protecting others, running toward danger when everyone else ran away. I honor them by living, by being a good husband, a good father, a good man, by carrying their memory forward. He touched the names on the bronze parapet. They're heroes, all of them, and I'm just the last man who made it out. Linda Chen stayed in touch with Joe for the rest of his life. They exchanged letters, then emails, then phone calls. She attended his retirement party. He attended her daughter's wedding. They became, in a strange way, family, bound together by the 68 floors he had carried her down. "You saved my life," she would tell him every time they met. "You gave me a reason to keep climbing down," he would reply. "We saved each other." Joseph Caruso died on March 15th, 2024. He was 62 years old. The official cause was respiratory failure, the legacy of Ground Zero, the price paid by so many first responders. He died at home, surrounded by his family. Angela held his hand. Michael and Isabella were there, along with their children, the grandchildren who had heard the story of September 11th so many times they could recite it by heart. "I love you," Angela whispered as he took his final breath. "I always have. I always will." At his funeral, the FDNY turned out in force. Thousands of firefighters lined the streets, saluting the flag-draped coffin. The bagpipes played Amazing Grace. The bell tolled its final alarm. Michael gave the eulogy. "My father was a hero," he said. Not because he was the last man out of the North Tower, though he was. Not because he saved lives that day, though he did. He was a hero because of how he lived every day after. He paused, looked at the coffin. He carried the weight of the dead. He honored their memory. He tried, every single day, to be worthy of the gift of survival, and he was. He was worthy. Michael wiped his eyes. Dad used to tell me that being a firefighter means carrying two weights, the people you save and the people you don't. But there's a third weight too, the weight of being alive when others aren't, the weight of carrying on. He looked at the crowd, at the firefighters, the family, the friends who had gathered to say goodbye. My father carried that weight for 23 years. He carried it with grace, with humility, with love. And now he can put it down. Now he can rest. Michael saluted the coffin. Rest easy, Dad. You've earned it. The brothers are waiting for you. Joseph Caruso was buried with full honors. His headstone reads, Joseph Caruso, 1962 to 2024, FDNY Ladder 5, Last Man Out, Forever a Hero. And every year, on September 11th, flowers appear at his grave, left by family, by friends, by strangers who heard his story and wanted to pay their respects. Left by Linda Chen, who never forgot the man who carried her to safety. Left by the city that remembers.